Welcome to the Human Evolution Podcast, where we dive deep into the science, philosophies, and strategies that create real and lasting change. I'm OriGoldstein, and here we leave traditional self-help behind and map the real terrain of true personal development.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm still in Texas. It is 29 degrees Fahrenheit and snowing today. All the cafes are shut down except for the one in the building that I'm in right now. Ori's still in Florida, and what, you got 70-something degrees over there, I think?
75 degrees. I'm trying to convince Lee to come visit me. I have no clue why the guy would just stay in cold Texas, given the fact that he is a digital nomad.
Yeah.
But I wish you the best of luck. I'm just saying, there are better choices.
Well, we extended through here to April 1st, and everybody's like, the winters aren't that bad. Now, that said, the rest of the country is under a pretty nasty cold as well.
Agreed.
There's no really safe place to go except for where you're at, and you're down, in the Miami area there. So that's obviously the nicest spot. But that definitely was an oversight on my part. And lovely town here. I have nothing bad to say about Galveston. Would definitely come back to visit and just time it a little bit better, because it's one of those places that it's the Airbnb that we were in is small by design. Well, because it's still not cheap. I mean, our Airbnb is a one bedroom. It's in an old house, but it's been renovated. It's walkable to everything. I've got the Gulf of America. Can I say that?
Gulf of America?
Yeah. Got the Gulf of Mexico over here, and the cruise ship terminals I can see them in both directions. The Gulf's right behind me, behind the building, and then the cruise ships are right over here. And very walkable, but even our little one bedroom is still $2,300 a month. So it's not like a steal or anything like that, because it's a very expensive little town. But my old place in your neck of the woods, I think, would be renting out for far more than that now. So whatever. There's no cheap place. There's no secret. There's no cheap place to go. Like we were mentioning a minute ago, you can go to Playa del Carmen in Mexico. We've both been there several times. Lovely place, but it's still Mexico. You still can't get Amazon, and some things you can't get from the stores.
Yep.
You can get other things from the stores. You can get steroids and everything else, but you just can't. It's not the same. It's not the same as being in the U.S. You can't flush toilet paper some places. You know what I mean? It's just a pain. You can't drink the water. So anyway, nobody tuned in here to listen to two old guys talking about the weather, but that's what's going on in the world right now. But we thought we'd get into something that plagues everybody today. It's pretty much a common thing, including myself, where whether you're dealing with mental health or physical or dietary or insert anything here, when you're with your therapist, coach, or even just a friend who helps you with things, when you're in front of people and you're accountable, it's easy to execute on these things, and it's top of mind, and you want to do the best you can, and it's very easy. It's literally as soon as you leave that person. So when they're not in front of your face and it's not there, you don't have, I guess, accountability would be the big theme today. You've seen this in your practice, where you can help somebody. They'll be in front of you. They'll like, I got it. This is great. I feel good. And then they walk out the door, and then a short time later, they reach out and they essentially slip back in. They're not really applying the tools that you've given them, or they don't have the accountability.
To me, it's just such a big thing that, to me, it really is the one thing that makes a difference. In the fact that, and we've spoken about my rule so many different times, but my rule here is you're immature. And what I mean, you're immature and you're trying too hard. And what I mean by that is the fact that you develop a habit when you're 5 years old in terms of doing something, or a way of thinking that you develop when you're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And now you go and you talk to me, and I point out to you the fact that there's flaws in your thinking. But that 5-year-old is still there in the background until you fully heal it. And what ends up happening is the fact that even though you make the change, you have to become that new you on a consistent basis. We've spoken about Joe Dispenza ad nauseum here, really, when it's all said and done, but I just love the title of his book so much, because it really breaks down exactly what it's about, which is the concept of breaking the habit of being yourself. At the end of the day, I can work with you, I can make you feel great. And Tony Robbins even talks about the fact that you can do a 4-day workshop with Tony Robbins. You leave there, you are hyped beyond belief. You're doing so great. But then what happens is 2 weeks later, you realize that you're still doing the same things that you always did. And to me, it's the reason why I brought this up is just there's multiple clients I'm working with in this way, but one that really came up in my mind right now, that we've just done a couple of sessions together. And at the end of every session, she is on top of the world. She's ready to go out and just make a change in every single facet of her life. And I always tell them, stay in touch with me. I want to know what's going on. Let's see what happens. And inevitably, a day later, 2 days later, the text messages start kind of dwindling down. And so I reached back out to her and I'm like, so how are things going? And she's like, oh, well, you know what? I've got this pain now and this is going on. And I'm like, do you remember what we were talking about? Do you remember the meditation? Do you remember the things? Do you remember about telling that kid inside of yourself to shut up and not let it continue on doing it? And she's like, oh, yes, 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 you're completely right. And then like 5 minutes later, she sends me another text message going like, have you heard about this disease? This is what I think I have. I'm not a doctor. My first response to her was, look, I mean, you think you have it, go get checked out by a doctor. I'm not saying you don't have it. What I am saying, nonetheless, is the fact that what you're doing is you're reassociating back with a problem and you're trying to figure out why it is that you're still broken, why it is that you've got this problem. And as long as you're looking at it from the point of view of the problem, you're never going to get better. It's that Albert Einstein saying that is so, so powerful, that you are never going to solve a problem at the same level of thinking that created it. And to me, that idea of you're immature is I can help you for a moment see life from a mature, detached perspective. I can be the mirror enough to pull you out of your story and have you see something very differently. But if you just go right back into your story, nothing has really changed. The change doesn't happen with me in the session. The change happens with you taking the lessons from the session and deciding to see the world differently. It is literally a decision that you have to make of, I have to see the world differently. I have to be different in this world. Otherwise, you haven't broken the pattern of being yourself.
It's that business saying, it reminds me of what got us here won't get us there kind of thing. Like you have to change, because obviously what you're doing now isn't working, or even if it has worked a little bit, you still need to change to get to the next step. And I imagine a lot of people criticize the whole industry. When I say that, I mean just any type of therapy or training. How long do I need to come here? When am I going to be fixed? Well, that's really on you, like on the patient, because if we have a session and you can apply the tools, you can walk out of here and not have another problem, okay, great. But for a patient to say that, it's responsibility and accountability is on them, right? Like maybe for the rest of your life, if you're not getting it.
I know I've spoken about it before, and it's a big thing that I speak about in the Shift community with all my clients, the concept of the logical levels, where it's like, if you remember, it's kind of like that pyramid where at the very top you have identity, beneath that you have your beliefs and values, all the way down to your environment. And what ends up happening is, in this case, for example, I gave her a new behavior. I told her, do this differently. But what happened was, she was still stuck in the belief of I am broken, which is just such a common belief that just tends to permeate society. And we could go into a long discussion as to why that is. But if you're trying to change your behavior of, I'm going to do this differently, I'm going to act differently, I'm going to listen to this, I'm going to do that, but your deepest belief is I am broken, what's going to happen is you're just going to find more proof of, even though I'm doing this, that's not really going to work for me because I'm a broken individual. Or if you've got a belief, if it's one level beneath that, of something along the lines of nothing can really help me, which is basically just one level below I'm broken and basically says the same thing. But if you've got that belief of sitting there saying nothing can really help me, or I've tried everything and nothing ever works for me, something along those lines, where you are is a place that you can change as many capabilities as you want. You can change as many behaviors as you want. But you have to literally become that new person. And I say it right now, and I'm saying it with as much emphasis as I can, in terms of the fact that all I aim to do with people is, and I've become fairly successful at it, but even with that, I have to drive this point into them as hard as possible. If you want to make a change with me, you have to become someone new by the time we're done. Otherwise, all you're doing is you just got another person that you're paying a lot of money for to give you advice that you're not following through on. Or you're following through on the advice, but you're not actually taking the steps to become that new you. I am surrounded everywhere around me, down to like the necklace that I'm wearing, down to you joke with me about it over the idea of we should start a band, down to the idea of like, I make myself affirmation songs that specifically at all points in my life are reinforcing into my brain the messages I want to have. So I'm completely just forcing in a new way of being. And you have to, in order to make a change in your life, you just can't be the same person that had the problem. Otherwise, all you're going to do is maybe make a small change. And I'm not saying that's not possible, but all that's going to happen is I get you to stop smoking. And all that happens is you truly stop smoking, but you hate yourself for stopping to smoke. You miss smoking. And you sit there thinking that like it's just one day you're just going to fall off that wagon and you're going to start smoking again. As opposed to becoming a non-smoker, a truly healthy person that would never choose smoking in the first place. In which case, you could even take a drag on a cigarette and you sit there going, I can't believe I ever wanted this. I can't believe I ever liked this. That is the change that truly, truly makes the difference.
And it worked with me with alcohol. Now, obviously, sometimes I still overdo it, but compared to what I was like before, like today, it's snowing, it's cold. I know there's a nice pub right over there, nice cozy Irish pub. I've got nothing to do after this. Who's going to stop me? And everybody knows the story. I used to drink 7 days a week, and when you reframed it for me in the sense that, and who knows, maybe by textbook definitions, maybe I am an alcoholic, which doesn't offend me if somebody said that. But if I put that label on myself, then it just changes everything. Now I can't have one drink, or I'm going to spiral. So I've literally been able to, and goes way back to us talking about this months ago. I've been able to go sit at a bar and have like 2 beers. I've even been able to have 1.5 and just set the half empty one on the bar, which is sacrilegious where I come from. I've been able to do that and walk out and be like, fuck it, whatever. Maybe I should be doing this, or maybe I shouldn't be doing this, but it doesn't matter to me anymore like it did before. Now, if someone were to say, you're an alcoholic, you need help, I'm like, oh God, I'm an alcoholic. And then I would have one drink. I'm like, well, I had one, I might as well get blasted, kind of thing. So it really does work in that sense of just reframing it. Yeah.
So first and foremost, what I want to say is I'm so freaking proud of you for like actually making that shift, because that's a shift that makes a difference. Then what I want to do is I kind of want to deconstruct how we got you there. And obviously I need you to like chime in, because I'm just taking you through the stuff I did, but I want people to actually hear the reframes that happened in your mind to get there. But to me, what I feel was like one of the biggest shifts for you was you were used to the idea of going to a bar and telling yourself, I can't drink, I'm not allowed to do this. And the one reframe we made for you was go to the bar, and if you want to drink, darn well drink, but make it a conscious choice. And what you did was, in that moment, the first few times you just said, pardon me, you just said, okay, fine, I can't drink. And then you said, okay, fine, I'm going to choose to drink. And you drank and you got drunk and whatever it was. But then one time you went to the bar and you had the conscious choice of, I'm not going to drink. And you said, cool, I'm not going to drink. And something in your mind made a shift. You made the change from the behavior level. You went up to the capabilities level. I can now choose not to drink. So you took it that one level higher. I am capable of choosing not to drink. And then we made more reframes around it over the idea of, you started looking at alcohol as like, it's messing up my ability to sleep well. It's messing up my ability to make other changes in my life. So then we changed alcohol from alcohol equals fun to alcohol equals consequences. And then all of a sudden, so that stopped that level. And then once those things happened and you started making more choices, you got to the point of sitting there saying, I am in control. It became an identity level thing of, now I can choose to drink or not to drink. And it all started for you with actually making that first shift in the tiny way of sitting there saying, I'm not going to be reactive. I'm not going to just do the knee-jerk reaction. I'm just going to choose to respond. And I want you to fill in the blanks. But before we do that, I just want to kind of like tie this into the other client for a moment. In terms of the fact that I sat there and I gave her this advice, do this and this and this and this and this. And her reaction to me right away was, absolutely, I agree with you. Do you think I have this disease? So in that moment, what happened was her capabilities of I can change didn't happen. Her identity level of I am broken drove everything. Sat there saying, I'll do these things, but I know that what I have is so much bigger. And so I want to take that one step further in a moment, but I want you to fill in some extra blanks in terms of what happened for you first, and we'll go from there.
It was really that simple of just having the choice, because it was for the longest time, and I love telling the story because I love talking about myself, but I would get off a long day's work in Florida and like, well, even if deep down I really didn't want to drink, I'm like, well, it was a long day. I deserve to with it. So I had all these excuses in my mind. I was all like pre-programmed stuff. I just wasn't taking control or responsibility for anything. Long day's work, I would go sit and have a few and then feel terrible the next morning. Then on my days off, I'm like, well, it's a day off. I should be at the beach drinking at the world famous elbow room or something. So then I would go do that, whether I was blaming it on societal pressures because this is what men do when they get off work and have a hard day. There's a combination of many, many things. And then eventually I got to the point where like, oh, I don't have to, like, do I really want this? I made the choice. I know it sounds simplistic, but it really was just like, oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I want to feel like that, or why can't I just have 2? Why do I have to have 6? Something I did the other day, actually. I was walking around town here. I didn't have anything to do. When I say town, I mean downtown Galveston, very small, a lot of little pubs, cafes. And I got done working at about, 2 or 3 p.m. Might have been Sunday even. I'm like, gosh, I got really nothing to do right now. I wouldn't mind a beer. And then I remembered I was actually able to go feel physically what it was like on my last hangover, which was a while ago. When I say hangover, like my hangovers used to be not being able to move for 2 days. When I say hangover now, I mean, I wake up in the morning, I still get up and do everything I need to do, but I'm like, I wish I had, like, I didn't sleep that well. Sluggish. Yeah. Just generally feeling like, oh, come on, really. And I was actually able to conjure up that feeling, that physical feeling in my body. And some of this goes back to the meditation retreat, I think, because when I got more in tune with everything then. And I was able to make myself feel like, do you remember what that felt like? You're probably going to feel like this, that feeling, that low-grade anxiety and sluggish the following day. And it doesn't mean that I don't think about it every day, like I just mentioned. There's a nice little warm, cozy pub right across the street, and it would be really nice to sit in there today. But when I weigh out all the circumstances and all the pros and cons, I'm oversimplifying it, but it really was that easy.
Let me just play the game with you. And
Sure.
I don't want you to say things that you just want me to hear or the listeners to hear. Just answer me completely honestly and let's just see. Like, just finish off the sentence for me. Like, alcohol equals. What does alcohol equal for you?
That's a good one, and I have a good answer for it.
Mm-hmm.
It used to equal good times, bad times, like something to do during the bad times. It was literally part of my day. Alcohol equals part of my existence. Like, I used to sit and drink at home alone too, which I actually really enjoyed doing at the time. I used to watch TV and drink. So now, literally, when I think about alcohol now, I think about it has to be like a special occasion. Still fun. It still equals fun, but it equals fun in a very different context. So now it's just a very narrow thing for me, or like a social occasion, or it's very, very narrow spectrum. Where before it would take up a huge space in my life.
To go back to our previous sessions, and I'm just going off memory here, but please, by all means, listeners, fact check me here, like if you want to. Mm-hmm. But for you, alcohol always did equal fun. But for you, alcohol, and you said it right now too, alcohol to some degree, and I'm using my own wording here, alcohol equaled medication, right? Alcohol was your solution to a bad day. Alcohol was your solution to boredom. Alcohol was your solution to just feeling bad. And now you got to the point of saying, because you brought in the concept of the hangover, you all of a sudden realize the fact this pill has a side effect, right? Mm-hmm. I can take that pill, but guess what? It's also going to have this and this and this side effect to me. And so you changed the connection between alcohol in your brain to the fact of like, yeah, I can have fun. And this to me is a big difference between what I believe I can do with people when it works well, or any hypnotist, or big change when it works for someone, as opposed to the concept of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I've said it before and I'll say it again. Amazingly powerful, and if it's what you need, it works great. But Alcoholics Anonymous sticks with the concept of, for the rest of your life, you're an alcoholic and you can never touch it again, because if you do, you just got right back on the horse and you're just going to go trotting back off into the sunset. Whereas my logic is, alcohol does equal fun, but alcohol also equals not fun. Alcohol also equals the pain in the morning. Alcohol also equals the not enjoying the way I feel after the fact. Alcohol also equals shame. Alcohol also equals all these different things. Alcohol also equals
expensive too.
Alcohol also equals expensive. And as soon as you throw in all those extra things on top of it, it becomes something that your brain now has an ability to weigh it, because what happened is, literally, take it back to my first statement, you're no longer immature. You no longer have one kid sitting there going, let's go off and drink and everything in my life will be great. That's what I need to feel good. You now have an adult that gets to temper the kid, and the kid says, alcohol equals great. And you go, but is that the kind of great I want to feel today? Or is that the kind of great I'm going to feel tomorrow? And the kid might say yes, and the adult might agree. And you're going to say, I'm going to go off and have a drink. Or you might say, not today. I just don't feel like it. It's just going to mess up my workout tomorrow. I'm going to get a bad night's sleep. And there's just too many consequences associated with it. That is such a big difference. It is such a big difference. And like, it's like, I just like genuinely from the bottom of my heart, Lee, I'm just so freaking proud of you for continuing to do the work, because I mean, we had our first, whatever it was, 15 episodes where you made some changes and kept reverting back. And now I can see the fact that you, completely unattached to me, made enough other changes in your life, made enough momentum. Now you just got to the point of sitting there going like, I just don't want to drink so much anymore. You literally grew up. You stopped being the immature kid that was driving the bus at all times. And that is amazing, dude. I'm really, really proud of you.
It feels good. And it literally was just you're just reframing it for me, because like you mentioned, I have nothing against the 12-step program. I tried to go to it once. I didn't last 10 minutes. But I think just that identity, the identity of like, I'm an alcoholic, that would have literally ruined, I never would have made it, because I never would have made it through the program, because if I'd fallen off once. So now, even if I go, let's say I go drink on a Tuesday and I have a few and I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. Then it's over. I chastise myself a little bit. I don't feel well the next day. So what? The life goes on. But in a program like that, again, nothing against the program. In a program like that, for me, it would not have worked, because I'm starting at day zero again. It would have been it's too much. It's too much. And that. So along the lines of affirmations as well, which I know some people and I've even had this thought in my past when I was younger. I'm like, oh, those are silly. Those don't work. But I think 2 points to what you said earlier. Well, start with me. So what I've gotten a habit of doing now, and I don't do them to the extent that I should, but what I've actually done it towards the end of the day is the other day, I think, because I'm trying to adhere to like a better diet now, aren't we all? But I'm trying to like be better about what I like the food I take. And I had like a really good day, like a really clean eating day, whatever. Didn't have any caffeine, and then I think I went and had like a banana. I had like a moment of weakness. I had like a banana. Then I got home and I had like a big fucking spoonful of peanut butter, which is awesome, especially if you haven't had carbs. And I remember thinking that in the past that would have like just like the AA thing that would have thrown off everything. My diet I ruined today. And I had to like literally sit in the mirror in the bathroom and say, wait a second, you had that big scoop of peanut butter that you probably shouldn't have had, but you were perfect the rest of the day. Like you did better than the day before. Okay, I had one little thing that I was not happy about, but the rest of the day was great. And I was able to get right back into my routine. So I've been doing that a lot. And I know this isn't monumental brand new information. Everybody knows this stuff, but it's like just saying those things to myself. I'm like, you did good today. You got a lot of work done and you didn't go get 6 brownies at the whatever.
This is one of the reasons why I absolutely adore Brittany, for example, where Brittany, it's like, it's most dietitians I know would sit there, tell you, here's your strict diet, stick with it, stick with these macros, everything is good. And the thing that I absolutely adore with Brittany, and I've seen her do it in the Shift community so much, is she sits there saying, if you want a freaking Oreo, have an Oreo. It's not going to be the one thing that throws you off the edge. It's like, but after you have an Oreo, don't beat yourself up, say, I messed up for today and have the rest of the box, right? Like, it's just that they're saying, I want an Oreo, I had an Oreo. And then afterwards, again, don't go into reactive mode of I've messed up. Go into responsive mode and sit there saying, do I want a second? If your answer is yes, have a second. Go into responsive mode. Do I want a third? No, God, no. Those things are terrible after 2. You know, it's like you just get to the point of, and that difference makes such a huge difference because now what's going on is you're constantly bringing the adult back into the conversation. You're constantly creating, from a neurological perspective, you're creating the cognitive dissonance of your old pattern isn't driving you anymore. The kid is no longer driving the bus. You got an adult that sits there saying, what do I choose to do now? What do I choose to do now? What do I choose to do now? And eventually the adult says, like, I've had what I wanted. Everything is good. And like the other thing is like we had this thing and she and I kind of like got into it a bit in terms of the fact that like in our weight loss masterclass, we're talking about the idea that she sits there saying, no one step on like that the scale is bad. And I 1,000,000% agree with her. If you're in the mindset of I'm a fatso and I'm going to fail, the moment you step on that scale and you see that you gained a pound, you beat yourself up and you say, my diet is over. Or if you lost a pound, you sit there going, let me go out and celebrate and let me eat good food. And that is, to me, the logic of the Alcoholics Anonymous kind of thing. And to me, the thing that I really want to stress into people is do that when you have to at the beginning if you want to. But I want you to get to the point that you step on the scale and if you gained a pound, you sit there going, I had a tough week. Okay, cool. Let me move back onto it. But you do need to go through a progression to get there. But I love the fact of you shouldn't be afraid of the world. What you should realize, just plain and simply, is that there is a little kid inside of you that got taught how to do certain things and is going to keep doing it as long as you're in reactive mode. The moment you step away and create that cognitive dissonance and understand what you're doing, make any decision you want. There's no such thing as a bad decision, but it was a decision instead of just a knee-jerk reaction. That is a difference.
So when I think about affirmations, I also think about not just things that we say or like for example, your recordings or the things that, I usually use an example because you have things that you put up within eyesight. You have actual things that you wear. Our friend Sean that I do the other show with, he has a pendant now that he got. And I was talking to him about you on the other show because it's something you can feel. It's physically there, whereas yep. You could put a Post-it up or whatever and you could pass by it in the house. But to actually have something like, okay, this is here, it's tangible, like it's hitting my body as I move, I know it's there. So he's doing that now. It's working very well for him. And it reminds me, going back to the client that would leave and go back to her environment. She would go back to her home. So I wonder how important it is, because if you want somebody to become a new person and start thinking differently, we can't just tell people, okay, you have to move your apartment, you have to get a new job, you have to get new friends. Sometimes you need new friends, but it's not really feasible for a lot of people to do. So having things like that around the house, and even if though people think they may be silly, but if you're in your own environment, just putting things up and leaving little notes to yourself or having something on your person, that could be very, very powerful, because you can't realistically just uproot and change your life, but you can do things in that environment that remind you.
And one of my favorite things, just to build up upon that, is it's something that is called transformational vocabulary. And they tie in very, very well in terms of the fact that one of my favorite sayings is your unconscious mind is always eavesdropping. And I think I actually mentioned the story to you before. I'm not going to go into it in much detail in terms of me and making the joke of myself, like just say, hey, stupid, and I'll turn around. But the idea is that every single thing that you say, even though you think it's a joke or even though you think it's a small thing, your unconscious mind is eavesdropping. And it's going to hear the fact that that's okay for you to be that way. So if you change that around in terms of transformational vocabulary, and even if at first it feels like a lie, if you sit there saying, I'm different, I've changed, something about me is different, your unconscious mind will hear it and it will start listening in on it. And so for me on affirmations, or me, like it's every single time I put this on, like I've got a mantra that I associate with it, that like it becomes something I say, I'm a leader, I inspire others to become who they truly are. And for me, every single time I look in the mirror, every single time I feel it against my chest, exactly like Sean, it means something to me. It reminds me of the fact that I'm here to like lead a movement forward. It reminds me that I've got to do these things. And so my unconscious mind is always eavesdropping. Every single time I look at it, I put a new thought into my unconscious mind of I'm a leader. So then when I've got the negative thought of, you know what, I feel completely helpless today, I feel completely terrible. As soon as I feel that, like I'll look at the necklace and I'll remind myself, do you know what? That's just the old me saying these things. And that small extra difference of me reminding myself of there's still a kid inside of me. There's still a kid inside of me that still is stuck in the old thought pattern. And that's not beating myself up for it, but just recognizing it and saying, I get it. Today I'm not feeling good, but why can't I just say today I don't feel good rather than I am a powerless individual? And then reinforcing it with a transformational vocabulary of I'm powerful. I can do these things. I have the capability. And then to take it one step further in terms of affirmations, like you know very much so, and I get teased for, and I absolutely love being teased for it, is I'll sleep with affirmations in, where throughout the night, I've got affirmations specifically on the things I want to work on. So me, right now, for whatever reason, I'm reinforcing a stronger sense of confidence and safety. It's just the stuff I want to work on. So throughout the night, I've got songs in my head, I've got affirmations that sit there saying, I feel completely safe and comfortable, I have complete faith in everything working out for me. And there's a lot more statements around that. And while I'm asleep, my unconscious mind is always eavesdropping. It's hearing those things. And for whatever reason, in the middle of the day, I find myself just saying there, I feel completely safe and comfortable. I don't know why I say it. I don't know how, but it got stuck in my head. And now my unconscious mind is saying it to me. It becomes that much more powerful. At the end of the day, you've got to understand the fact that you are nothing more than your habits. The things you say to yourself, the things you feel are habits. If you start saying to yourself the right things, that becomes a habit. If you start feeling empowered in this situation and that situation, that becomes a habit. And at the beginning, it can feel like bullshit. It can feel like a lie. It can feel like something you don't want to continue. And all I can say is, then don't continue, but don't expect yourself to change. It's just that simple. If you want to be different, be different. Don't try and be different. Literally become the new you and make the shift happen.
There are very few people who are more skeptical than me about certain things like that. And I told you at the retreat, everybody around me was deathly ill. And when came in with COVID, and the first day, it was mismanaged. No offense to the retreat people, but it was mismanaged in the sense that people are sneezing on everything. Like you're in the meditation hall. For anybody listening who doesn't know what we're talking about, it's a 10, 12-day silent meditation retreat. And I went to the same thing that Ori did, just in different locations. He's actually going back here in a little bit. And they put you in a meditation hall, or at least where I was. There were 16 of us, very small group. They had us spaced out evenly on our meditation pillows. And the guys that were sick were taking it to literally like not moving, because they were just letting it fly. They're just sneezing. You know, you could almost feel it from the other side of the room. So then one by one, throughout the first couple of days, the next guy started coughing, and all around me, I was surrounded by sick people. And this was like, I'm like, I got nothing else to think about or do, because you can't have your phone, take notes, or do anything else in there. There's no multimedia things to do. So they let us walk around this little yard during the day, and I would make laps around that yard, and I would tell myself over and over again, and I didn't even believe it myself, I have a strong immune system. I don't get sick. That's just not true. I get sick. But these people aren't going to make me sick. My immune system is strong. And I literally, for laps, I would just say the same thing, knowing that this is bullshit, but I didn't get sick. And I ate and touched everything that those idiots did. And again, placebo effect doesn't matter. But even me knowing like this is silly that I'm talking to myself like this, it worked. So, it's as simple as that. It had that profound effect.
There's so many different ways to take this. I love the concept of placebo effect, right? Because like they'll always measure it and they'll go like placebo effect, like 30% of people just were affected by the placebo. Think about that from the other point of view. 3 out of 10 people got a result as good as a drug by just believing in something in a certain way. And now the thing is, if you start doing it to yourself, that placebo effect goes up to, in my opinion, like 70, 80, 90% because you actually do it enough times.
That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. So I was of the mind that maybe if you're doing it to yourself, it would have lesser effect because you're in your own head. But now I see where you're going with this now, because you're the one doing it, because you're doing it more often and you're hearing it in your own voice in your own head. Okay. That completely changes my view on that. That's interesting. Okay. Sorry to cut you off there.
Yeah. No. It's exactly that. So there's a lot of different ways around this in terms of the fact that like they call it like, for example, white coat syndrome. I made up the white coat syndrome thing, but like sometimes if you hear a doctor tell you something, you'll believe it more. But all that happens, for example, if a doctor tells you, do you know what, you're more prone to a disease, and then you start saying in your own mind, I'm more prone to a disease, I'm more prone to a disease, I'm more prone to a disease, that tends to last. At the end of the day, a belief is nothing more than a statement that you've said enough times that your brain doesn't reject it anymore. So like, let's just go a little bit into the concept of hypnosis. And I think that we've also discussed this before, but the textbook definition of hypnosis, or at least the one that I use, and I believe most clinical hypnotists would basically define hypnosis as, it's a bypass of the critical faculty and the establishment of selective thinking. So let's break that down a bit. So right now, as I'm talking to you, there's a voice in your head that as I'm talking to you that sits there going, is what he's saying making sense? Is it true that the placebo works this way? Whatever it is, that is your critical faculty. It's criticizing everything that goes on and it's analyzing, does this make sense? Am I willing to let this in or not? So hypnosis is nothing more than a bypass of that portion inside of you that says, this is right, this isn't right. This is true, this isn't true. And then the second one is establishment of selective thinking, that if I were to tell you placebo effect is that strong and I bypass your critical faculty and then you go, placebo effect is that strong. Oh my God, this is amazing. And you now start believing it, hypnosis has occurred. So now to take that to the concept of affirmations, let's say you tell yourself the affirmation of, I never get sick. Or my favorite one is I always say, I don't do stress. I like making what I call sound bites, like small ones. I don't do stress. It's because when you say something small and catchy, your brain can repeat it to you much more easily. It's much easier to say, I don't do stress than I am never stressful and God loves me and blah. It's like, it just gets, I don't do stress. Simple, quick, to the point, it does things. So
it's so funny. I got to cut you off again.
Yeah.
Just that it's making me laugh just thinking about that. And that in itself is like lightening my mood. I don't do stress. Because that I can get behind.
But every single person listening to this to do that, it's like, and to me, it's like, it's that big thing of creating sound bites. It's like, and I was joking with you and like, I'll share it with people when it comes to it. But like the idea of like, also like songs, for example, where anything that's catchy that your brain wants to repeat because it really has it, it becomes something fun. So I don't do stress becomes something funny that like when you're with your friends and they're like, doesn't that stress you out? And you go, I don't do stress. And they go, what the hell? And you get that giggle. It makes you want to say it again the next time and your brain gets a positive reinforcement around it. Now, to bring that back to the concept of the hypnosis definition, I say it the first time, I don't do stress, and my brain goes, bullshit. Do you remember last week? You did a whole lot of stress. But then when you keep saying it enough times and you say, I don't do stress, I don't do stress, I don't do stress. And then the one time it kind of like kicks in and your critical faculty goes, is this real? Are you different? Is there something different about you? And when you do it enough times with the concept of affirmation and repeated affirmation, what happens is it bypasses your critical faculty and it locks itself in terms of like the fact of like, you don't do stress. That's amazing. And I also want to make a comment here. Did you notice what I just did? I said it in the second person. You don't do stress as opposed to I don't do stress, which is another powerful thing in affirmations, where what you do is you also sometimes say your affirmations in the second person because that's sometimes how that you verify something for yourself. It's one thing to say, I don't do stress. It's another thing to say, you don't do stress, Ori. That's interesting. That's a good thing about you. And so when you start locking these things in, you bypass the critical faculty and then your brain establishes a selective thinking of, I don't do stress. Now, it's not to say I never get stressed, but like when I do get stressed and that voice kicks in, it goes, but I don't do stress. All of a sudden my stress level drops from like 80, 90 down to like 30 going like, this too shall pass. I don't do stress. It's not that big a deal. And it locks it in so powerfully, so powerfully.
Just the one-liners. See, honestly, I think that's some people's, even though you're saying them to yourself, even though people leave notes to themselves, and depending upon whether they have somebody in the house or not. I honestly think that a lot of the barrier for some people and affirmations are they think that it's silly and they feel silly doing it. But if you can turn it into a one-liner, because I think that people hear affirmations and everything else, they think about all like the long
Every day,
long blurbs.
every way, I'm getting better, and even better, right?
Yeah, and I think it's just that simple. You probably already have something put together for this, of
Absolutely.
call it something edgy, like affirmations for the somebody.
Affirmations for the non-believers kind of thing.
Dan Harris did a good job with his book. It was a meditation for fidgety skeptics or something like that.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Title.
Yeah, I'll just take it one step further. It's the way I love to do this, and it's what I call sound bites, and I absolutely love it. If you want catchy statements or statements that kind of like make you giggle or laugh or kind of like bring up an emotion inside of you. And so the example I use most often, because it's just something that's been stated so often, is like, if you think all the way back to, what was it, like 2001, 2002, maybe it was the 1990s, the O.J. Simpson trial, whenever that was. It's 1996, or the O.J. Simpson trial.
Might have been 93. So anyway, go ahead.
Johnny Cochran did something so powerful. So you've got a jury of 12 people that basically have to decide whether O.J. Simpson is guilty or not, right? And he goes and he makes O.J. try on the glove, and the glove didn't fit. Johnny Cochran made the most powerful statement right there that all hypnotists love. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And I love that statement. It's catchy. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Now what happens is every single time Johnny Cochran says, oh, and the glove doesn't fit, there's a little voice in the back of the juror's head, because it's catchy. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Do you know what I'm going to do? The glove didn't fit him. I can't call him guilty. It becomes a catchy statement that fits, like I don't do stress, or it's anything along those lines. It becomes something catchy in your brain, a soundbite as I call it, that makes such a big difference because your brain naturally repeats it for itself.
We're talking about having things readily available that you can read or see. Maybe you have things on your phone, maybe you don't, but I have on my screensaver on my phone, I have that countdown, my actuary tables for the year that I, based on current medical science and everything, the year that I'm going to die. Well, guess what? I don't ever look at it. I look at my phone nonstop, but it's so subdued on there. Subconsciously, I just don't even pay attention to it. Not because I don't care what it says. I just don't think about it. So my initial thought was everybody should have affirmations or something on their phone or what they look at the most, but maybe that's not right. Maybe it needs to be more of a physical, tangible, like a Post-it note or something like that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, other than I know that if I put something on my phone screen, it wouldn't work for me.
And I take that from two different points of view. So like, yes, it is something that kind of falls into the background, but there's also the concept that the unconscious mind sees everything. There's actually truth in the fact that, like, very often a suggestion that's put in the background becomes more powerful. So there was a study that was done, it's probably going back 20 years, I don't know what it was, where all that they did was researchers took a person walking down the street and they said, what we want you to do is they got a group of individuals to walk up to the person holding a cup of coffee and say, I've got to ask you a question. I'm sorry, I'm holding this clipboard. Would you mind? Would you hold my cup of coffee? And they made the person hold a cup of coffee. And then they asked them questions. And then half an hour later, they would just find the same person that was walking down the street and they would ask them, what did you think of the researcher? And all that they did was, for half the people, or whatever percentage of the people, they made the person hold a hot cup of coffee. So just a warm cup of coffee. So the researcher would walk up with a cup of coffee on their clipboard, say, sorry, would you hold this cup of coffee? And the person held a warm cup of coffee, and then they'd ask them the question, say, thank you so much, I'll take back my coffee and walk away. And then the other half of the people would give them iced coffee. They would just hand them a cold cup of coffee and make the person hold a cold cup of coffee. And the research was staggering, like way beyond statistical significance. The people that held a warm cup of coffee would say, I don't know why, but that researcher seemed like a warm person to me. And the people that held iced coffee would say, I don't know why, the person just seemed kind of cold and distant. Completely unconscious. No one paid attention to it. I just hold my cup of coffee while I ask you these questions. Exact same questions, everything else.
Great.
The unconscious mind picks up on everything. So if you're holding a cold cup of coffee while you're looking at a person, on a deep enough level, something in your brain sits there going, I feel cold, I feel frigid, and you connect it to that person. From the other side, holding a warm cup of coffee, oh, I feel cold, I feel warm, I feel comfortable. And you look at the person, you feel warm and comfortable around that person. So even though you don't pay attention to that thing on your phone, somewhere in the back of your mind, you're noticing it on the deepest level. And my logic is the unconscious mind is always eavesdropping. So what I say is, because it's doing it, do it everywhere. Make it blatantly obvious. Put on post-it notes everywhere. Put it on your wall. I told you this before, and I'm not necessarily saying everyone should do it. I wrote it on my body for 6 months, maybe even 12 months. I actually wrote statements on my body of like, I love myself. You are special. You are good. You are kind, whatever it is. And so I had it as very blatant. And at the same time, I also had very, very non-blatant things, right? Like just small things, like something I wear that I don't pay attention to very often, but means something to me. And when it comes at you from every single angle and every single way, your brain has no choice but to say, well, if it's coming at me from everywhere, that has to mean something. That has to mean something. So it's like, it's just one of those things of like, why choose as opposed to just like throw everything and the kitchen sink at it, and then then you don't really stand a chance of failure at this.
We're talking about people leaving a session and kind of falling back into their own little trap, their own mental trap, where affirmations is everything you described just now would help. And I'm wondering, some people are thinking, like, well, I've got kids, I've got a husband, wife, whatever. I just can't leave stuff all over the house for myself. They may be like a little reserved on that. I wonder just other little environmental changes that you could associate with that. I don't know, like maybe rearranging some furniture. Now I'm just throwing dumb ideas out there now, but I think like something you come into the house and you're like, that's different, and I know why it's different. And every time I see that picture is over here now, or that this chair is over here, something your brain will associate. So if you feel silly just leaving notes for yourself, maybe you could do other things in your environment that still conjure up the same.
And there's so many different things. So I'll give the example of just like writing on your body and covering it up. No one sees it. Getting yourself a bracelet that means something to you. Like what I've done for a lot of people is when they're working on self-esteem, I tell them, what I want you to do is just go to like Home Goods or a store where it's not even expensive if you don't have the money, and buy yourself a really beautiful mug. And that is your mug. Or buy yourself or get yourself a mug printed that just basically says the world's best dad or whatever it is. And just every single time you drink out of your mug, on one level, you're reinforcing it to yourself. And that in itself is not going to be the thing that gets you there. But when you stack one upon the other, upon the other, upon the other, and then you throw in a conscientious effort of like doing something like I'm working with Ori, or I'm listening to affirmations, or I've joined a community, or whatever it is, at that point in time, everything just becomes a cumulative effect, and the momentum is moving. The whole idea is just create momentum in the right direction. And so
it's like a little ritual.
Exactly, a ritual. Like that's exactly what it is. It's like you're just creating a ritual of success. And so to bring it back to the concept of my clients is they're so stuck in the momentum of I'm broken or nothing can help me. And as long as they're stuck in that momentum, nothing is going to help them. And my job with them is break that momentum. Create enough momentum in the opposite direction, or do something to break that momentum, break the pattern. It's like one of my favorite things is I haven't done this too often because it's pretty intense. But like when I used to do like sessions one-on-one, if it was like a really tough client and I had good rapport with them, I'd have a spray bottle of water. It's like literally like a puppy. Like it's like, I mean, like when the person said something, I'd actually like have the spray bottle and I'd go, and I'd spray them in the face, and it would break their pattern. That breaking the pattern, it becomes something that they giggle about, like once they get over wanting to kill me. But like that moment of like, oh my God, you know what? My life just sucks so much. It's like, I'm like, no, tell me more about it.
Great.
And then they go, do you know what? Like my husband sucks. What the hell? By the third time that they do it, the moment that the words even come to their mouth, they sit there going, I'm not going to say it again. Otherwise, Ori's going to spray me again. And so what happened was now the adult started realizing I've got to temper the kid, because this is just the momentum that the kid always had. I always say those things. Whatever you can do to break that pattern works. And it works a charm.
For those that need a little pain to make it through, just buy yourself a rubber band, and every time you say something stupid, just go ahead and give yourself a nice crack.
You actually mentioned something before. When you're in a house with your spouse and kids, and it feels weird to do it from the exact opposite direction, because it feels weird to do. Enroll them in it and tell them, look, guys, I'm doing something really big. You guys are going to see really weird, stupid Post-it notes. But that's because I'm doing something different now. I'm going to do something different, and you guys are going to laugh at me. And quite honestly, every single time you laugh at me, I'm remembering the fact that I'm not the same person that existed a month ago. It's like freaking own it, as opposed to like trying to hide it, own the fact that you are different. And the example I'll attach to this is you and the drinking. It's very easy for you to like go out drinking with your friends, and your friends go, oh my God, Lee, you've changed so much. I mean, you used to be so cool, and now you don't even drink with us. And you could sit there going, no, not me, like, come on, guys, let's just have a beer together.
I'll show you. Shots.
Exactly. Shots all around. Here we go.
Yeah.
Or you can own the fact that you're not different and go like, 100%, I'm doing things differently. Like, it's time to grow up, people. Like, I'm not going to be the same idiot that was there before and just mess up my life. And as soon as you do that, what generally ends up happening is at least 50% of the people will sit there going, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Like, maybe I should try that too. Because you were the one with enough guts, with enough balls to actually stand up and say, I don't want to continue the old pattern.
Yeah, that has happened where people have either been like, oh, that's really great. I mean, they still wanted to have fun and go out with me, but
Of course.
it wasn't, I was like, okay, I get it. That's cool. We'll use Fort Lauderdale as an example because I was there for a long time. And, it's a party culture. It's a tourist town, or at least the people I hung out with were the party culture. But, I was there for 15 years. I've had conversations with those people now. They're like, gosh, I can't believe there's no way we could have sustained this. What are we going to do this till we're 70? Like the kind of shit we were doing in our 30s. So most people do, like you mentioned, have that realization, like, okay, this is better, like this is healthier. And to your point about having a family and things like that, and leaving notes around, it can't hurt to expose them to some good ideas and some like good practices as well. So even if they think it's silly, like, well, because they'll remember, like, little kids, like, oh, mommy or daddy used to do this, and what's the harm in getting them off on a good habit early on and making it okay, making it not silly.
If there was one thing I'd want people to get out of everything I say, is the fact of, if you want to change, you have to become different. You are going to have people looking at you funny. You are going to have people questioning what it is you're doing. And if you are serious about changing, that is going to happen. If you're not serious about changing, what's going to happen is people look at you funny and you're just going to go back to where you were, and don't even bother listening to this. Don't even bother coming to see me. Don't even bother joining our community. But if you are serious about changing, understand the fact that people will question what's going on because you are going against the norm. And the question is, do you want to be an example or do you want to be a fucking sheep? That is really the question.
It's well said. Well, I couldn't have ended on a better note than that. We do appreciate everybody listening, watching, subscribing, all the things that we're supposed to say at the end of these. And we've got some big things coming up. We've got another trip coming up in 10 days.
By the time that this is released, it'll probably be like the week that we're going, right? Which is pretty awesome.
Pretty close. We're going to be working on a lot of cool stuff there too that we're happy to share with everybody. We're doing some in-person recordings and other things like that. So anyway, unless you've got something you need to add.
Actually not. Yeah, thank you, brother. Everything is great.
Sounds good. All right, to be continued.
Hey everyone, it's Lee. Just one more thing before you go. Ever wondered how journaling could help change your life? You can find out by downloading the Emotional Alchemy Journal from the link in the description. It's a powerful tool for deep self-reflection, and it's completely free. And if you're looking to connect with Ori and learn more about how he can help you, visit his website at OriGoldstein.com. A link will also be in the description. Until next time, keep challenging the chaos within, be a little kinder to yourself, and let's continue to evolve together.